Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Voice of America, the official podcast of the People's National Party. I am your host, Owen, and on this week's episode, we are going to be starting the first part of a small mini-series that I figured it's probably about time to record, and that is on the topic of distributism. And I wanted to break this up into what will probably become multiple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks probably, of different episodes regarding different topics and aspects of distributist economics, because it is a very interesting fiscal and economic theory to study, and I think a lot of people really have these ideas of what they think distributism might be, but they don't actually know how to define it, or they just want to learn more, and that's completely understandable. There's not a whole lot of resources out there, unfortunately, that give people an accurate understanding of distributism or what a society that would be living under distributist economics would look like. And so I think this would be a great opportunity for people who are curious or want to learn more to really pay attention and listen, because we're going to go over a lot of great topics, a lot of great issues, and we're going to talk about how distributism plans to solve these issues and how and why everyone here at the People's National Party subscribes to distributist economics and the economic agenda that it promotes. So definitely the most important thing we have to do is first define distributism so people can understand it better. Because a lot of people who already subscribe to a certain ideology tend to have a misinterpretation of what distributism is. So, for example, a lot of capitalists like to say that distributism is just really socialism in disguise. And a lot of socialists like to say that distributism is really just capitalism in disguise. The best definition that I ever heard of distributism is the socialization of capital. So in many ways, it's a mix of both, but it also recognizes the flaws of both systems. And I think most Americans can come to agreement with that, as we all know that true free market capitalism or state socialism does more harm than good, and it does not ultimately benefit the people. So we're going to briefly touch on what distributism is not, okay? It is not a form of socialism, because distributism claims that a key part of the freedom of men is the right to private ownership of goods. Distributism also seeks to spread government out rather than centralize it. Distributism as well believes in the free market exchange of goods between individuals. However, distributism is not capitalism, as it does not trust corporations or banks. It supports antitrust laws, and it supports human dignity over the right to make money. Those are 3 examples on each side of how you can understand that it really takes pieces from both socialism and capitalism, and it also recognizes the flaws of each other. So that's a good basis understanding of it. But as we move on, it's important to expand on these, because a lot of people start coming up with questions like, well, what would a distributist society actually look like? And is this potential utopia, supposedly, of distributism even possible? And how would it happen? How would we be able to balance everything out so that the economy works for the people again, and the families and the communities, rather than the government or the corporations? And that's what we're going to try to explain here. Now, to simply really quickly further on what distributism is not, I think it's important to point out that the very old-fashioned and really sickening debate between capitalism and socialism that has brought about so many problems in our society, it's really toxic, to be honest. And that's why distributism was really actually originally invented, because people like G.K. Chesterton and Hilaire Belloc knew that the current economic systems that were in place were not only not helping the people of Europe and other people around the world, but they were also causing a massive division in our society. And that was a serious problem. So distributism not only attempts to solve the issues like economic inequality that so many people around the world face, but also it tries to bring economics to a higher meaning and understanding. Because something about capitalism and socialism is that they are both very material ideologies. Capitalism and socialism are very secular and atheist in so many ways. They really they do not promote the type of things that distributism promotes that I'll get into in a second. You'll find that distributism is more about uplifting the culture and the society, the civilization as a whole, and bettering the people, not just their economic conditions, not just how much money they have in their pockets, but really transforming the culture and the nation to being a better, more faith-driven, faith-based, whatever you want to call it, society that cares for one another and that wants to help one another succeed. Because you'll find that capitalism and socialism do not necessarily promote these things. They talk about things like market competition or class division, depending on what side you're on. And this type of chaotic confusion that is promoted by both sides, as I was saying, has led to a massive destruction of our civilization. And we need ultimately an economic system that is going to care for the people, once again, not just in a fiscal sense, but also in a spiritual way. And that's something that really attracted me to the ideology, because as you'll find, it is very connected to Catholic social teaching. And something that's great about that is that the economics and the policies are driven by a common understanding of morality, justice, and prosperity for everyone. And I really do believe that, just like with the conversations of separation of church and state, I do believe that Christian social values have a key role to play in the structuring of the government and in this case, the economy. Because when you do not have a faith-based system in place, whatever system it may be, when you do not have people that are being held accountable based on your morals and your ethics, literally anything is possible. All the exploitation and degeneracy and just absolute horribleness that we all are experiencing under capitalism versus socialism. That's what happens when you take God and the family and religion in general out of your economics and your political views. So now I think it's important to define exactly what distributism is for those of you who still may not have a full understanding of it. And there's no better way to go, there's no better resource to go to when you're talking about a moral, religious, economic system than that of the Christian social values, specifically the Catholic social doctrines that really created this entire ideology. So you can look at things like works like Rerum Novarum in the late 19th century by Pope Leo XIII. You can also look at great Catholic economists like G.K. Chesterton and Hilaire Belloc, who I've mentioned many times in this podcast because they're great men who did tremendous things. And we're going to definitely talk about them more and expand on their works and their the types of ideas and things they contributed to this ideology and to Western civilization in, again, the coming weeks as we further this really interesting study about this economic theory. But, really what it breaks down to is what I would say is three core values that are repetitively preached in Catholic social teaching and in distributist economics. And those three pillars or values or whatever you want to call them that really are the building blocks and support of this entire economic ideology are subsidiarity, solidarity, and respect for the human person. And I'll expand on these right now, starting with subsidiarity, so you have a better understanding of it. Basically, it's the idea that no higher authority should do anything a lower authority is capable of. So something about distributists is that we are very much against the centralization of power, whether that be political or economic power. In capitalism and socialism, you'll find that the wealth and the power of the nation is concentrated into a select group of people, whether that be government elite or corporate elite, depending on what ideology you're part of or you live under. And distributists believe that the concentration of all that power and wealth and influence is unhealthy because it leads to, obviously, as we've seen, exploitation and overall the degradation of societies and cultures. We believe that the wealth of the nation should be distributed as widely as possible amongst the masses so that everybody has an equal opportunity to succeed. We do not believe that everybody needs to necessarily cross the finish line, if you use an analogy of like a race, like a sprint or whatever. We don't believe everybody needs to cross the finish line at the same time, like something that socialism would preach. Unequal amounts of wealth is perfectly fine. In fact, it's healthy for an economy to incentivize innovation and production. However, we do believe that there is a limit to the amount of wealth and power that one individual human being should have. We celebrate and honor and respect the great inventions and innovations that have come about through the free market system. However, when you have someone that is so ridiculously powerful that they could own practically everything in the world, they could literally start their own country, that is the point where you start questioning the morality of the amount of wealth and power and material resources that one person has, and what is the limit that they should own. And that is a heavily debated topic. And even amongst distributists, many would disagree with each other on the amount of wealth that one should be willing or capable of owning, and the amount of resources that they can hoard. But ultimately, distributism talks about redistributing just some portion of that wealth and influence and power to the rest of the people and the communities that helped these people, like the Jeff Bezoses and the Elon Musks of the world, the communities that helped them get to where they are today. Because they believe that as we are seeing day in and day out, the corporate elite do not reinvest their money back into the economy. They send it onto offshore bank accounts in islands far away, and they don't care about American values. They don't care about American enterprise, the American workers, and they're just going where profit is the highest and where labor is the cheapest. And that's perfect. They believe it's perfectly fine that they could ship thousands of jobs off to another market on the other side of the world, even if it's at the expense of the livelihoods of American citizens. Once again, they do not have the interests of America and its people in mind. And a socialist state would not be any better either, because, obviously we know the many horrors that come with big government controlling everything and the destruction of private property and civil liberties and things like that. And what is ultimately needed is a balance. And that is something that distributists preach day in and day out, because it is extremely, extremely important. a balanced approach that values the private sector and the public sector and the ways it can work together to benefit the people. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this week's episode. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, this is going to be the first part of a probably 3-part mini-series where we discuss distributism. This week, we talked about the basics of it, what it is not, to kind of set a foundation. And next week should be more about what an ideal distributist society would look like. And then finally, the third week, we'll be talking about how to achieve this ideal society so that everyone in America will be able to have an opportunity to succeed and prosper in this great nation. So, yeah, as always, I really do truly enjoy talking to each and every one of you every week. And until next time, God bless.